Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to another edition of Football Theory. I am lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by a legend in these parts. He's a former high school football coach at Burnett, Capel, Brownwood, Belton, Rotan, former college football player at Abilene Christian, also coached there in two different stints, was on the staff at Texas for 5 different seasons in different capacities as well. And now you can find his work over at ShipleyRanches.com. He is the coach, Bob Shipley. What's going on, Coach?
Hey, what's happening, Rod?
Coach, I appreciate you joining us as always. I know there are a lot of people excited about what the Longhorns did at the Combine. I want to get your thoughts on some of the players. I'll give you kind of their performances. I'll give you their times and where they finished at the Combine. And we can really talk about their impact on the 40 acres and what you expect to see from those guys. We'll also ask Coach about spring football, less than 2 weeks away from spring football. I want to get your thoughts about what areas of emphasis that the Longhorns are going to have during spring football. What areas do they need to work on the most during spring football? And we'll discuss that. And we'll also obviously getting ready for spring football. We'll talk about the biggest impact players who's got to step up, potential breakout candidates for the Longhorns during this spring football session. So we'll get into all of that. Before we do, of course, we have to thank our wonderful sponsor. Football Theory is brought to you by the accomplished Austin realtor, Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. Give her a shout today at 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. All right, Coach, we can start with the Combine performances. We'll start with the star of the show, Xavier Worthy, who stole the show, ran a 4.21 40-yard dash, was the NFL Combine record. He initially, on his first attempt, ran a 4.25, and then decided that he did believe that he had enough juice in the tank to break the Combine record. He finished, obviously, with the best time in the history of the NFL Combine. His hands, actually, 8 3/4, arms, 31 1/8 inch. He did have a 10-yard split of 1.49, was great on the vertical, too, at a 41-inch vertical, which ended up being the fourth best among the wide receivers. His broad jump, 10-11, was 5th best among the wide receivers. Xavier Worthy turned a lot of heads, Coach, at the NFL Combine. Did you think he was fast enough, that fast, to break the record?
Well, I mean, when you stop and think about all the guys through the years, the thousands that have run, I thought maybe that was a little pie in the sky, you know. But the great thing about it is it don't matter what you and I think about it. What matters is that he believed he could do it, and he did. Right. I mean, 41 vertical jump, that's right up there in my league. No, wait, that's my waist size. Okay. Never mind. No, thankfully, I'm not a 41, but I've been close a couple times. But no, I think he opened a lot of eyes, and I think it was just the cherry on top of his career. He deserves it. I've said this so many times. A little bit shaky his sophomore season, in my opinion. Didn't have just didn't make the clutch catches, or just didn't adjust to the ball that well. A lot of trash talk about him. I thought he might leave, you know. But man, to come back and have the gritty season that he had was just arguably one of the best seasons, and one of the best receivers in the history of the school. And then to top it off with that. Now, you and I both know that doesn't necessarily translate into a higher draft pick, nor does it translate into a can't miss prospect. Because there's been a lot of guys that are in the top 5 or 6 all time that never really panned out, you know, as players. But it's still, I would a lot rather have the conversation be than, you know, well, he's a 4.4, he's pretty fast, you know.
No, that's a good point, Coach. You go look at the Combine, actually. If you look at the top 25 fastest receivers at the NFL Combine, there's only actually been one of those guys, the top 25 fastest, who've ever had a 1,000-yard season in the NFL. Just one. So to your point, and by the way, that is not Xavier Worthy. He's got more to offer than that. Les Snead,
no doubt.
The GM of the Rams, said he's one of the fastest players he evaluated, but he's not just a guy that runs 40. He's this guy actually that translates to football speed. But you're right. I always say that being fast is like, you know, it's like being well endowed. Just because you're well endowed doesn't make you a great lover. There are a lot of other variables and factors at play there. And being fast don't necessarily make you a great receiver. There's a lot to playing that position, the subtle nuances of the game, the route running, precision route running. I do think he has that ability. But how about this, Coach? You know, the mock drafts, right? They have a lot of these. And I've been looking at the mock drafts, the post-combine mock drafts. There are now 4 post-combine mock drafts from very respectable guys: Dane Brugler, Lance Zierlein, Jordan Reed at ESPN, Charles Davis at NFL.com. These are different entities because Dane Brugler works for The Athletic. They all have Xavier Worthy going to the Kansas City Chiefs now. Post-combine mock drafts. Mel Kiper had him going to the Kansas City Chiefs in his latest mock draft prior to the combine. It seems like the popular pick is Xavier Worthy to the Kansas City Chiefs. If that's the case, it's going to be hard to pick against him having a hell of a career, or at least a start to it. I think he will be a 1,000-yard receiver if he ends up with the best play-calling head coach in the NFL and the best quarterback in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes. So that is something to watch, Coach.
They love the speed in Kansas City. And
yes, they do.
And Mahomes has already come out publicly and kind of given his nod of approval for Xavier Worthy being worthy of that first draft pick. So, wow. I mean, you know,
wow.
There's a lot of reasons to like the Kansas City Chiefs, but that would kind of put them over the top in my book.
And no doubt about it, Coach. I agree. I'm a Texans fan. As a Longhorn fan, I'd be happy for him. As a Texans fan, I'd be miserable. I would not want to see that. I also heard this. I heard a man, Xavier Worthy, say that his hero growing up, or at least his idol growing up playing football, was Deshaun Jackson. Interestingly enough, the one knock against X-Men now is that he's so light, right? I think he weighed in at 166 pounds. That's a little light, 5'11", so right over 5'11", right under 6 foot. 166 pounds. You go look at it. Hell, I believe that AD Mitchell, who we'll talk about here in a second, he ran a 4.35 at 205 pounds. I mean, so he was heavier. If you look at overall, the NFL likes those receivers who can hit that max speed, who have a little bit more meat on their bones. I will say this: if you look at it, Xavier Worthy at 166 pounds was the 9th lightest receiver at the combine since 2000. If you look at the top 50 lightest wide receivers in terms of their body mass index, only one of those guys ended up being a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL, and that was Deshaun Jackson, who actually played for Andy Reid. So Andy Reid knows how to use those small, speedy guys, something to keep in mind for my man X-Man. So there are some things working against X-Man, but if he ends up with the Kansas City Chiefs, there's no limit to what he could end up doing and what he could end up being in the NFL. Let's talk about AD Mitchell, Coach, because AD Mitchell also showed out at the combine and had a really impressive combine. As I said, he was 205 pounds at 6'2", 205 pounds, ran a 4.34. So I think I said 4.35. So I shorted the man. 4.35, 1.52 10-yard split. I mean, he was one of the most impressive wide receivers at the combine in terms of the workout. When you actually looked at his ranking, he was 3rd overall in the 40-yard dash, 6th overall among all the positions, but 3rd in the 40 with the wide receivers. His vertical was 8th. He had a 39.5-inch vertical. He had the best broad jump among all the wide receivers at 11 foot 4 inches in the broad jump. And AD Mitchell, his top speed ended up being the second best top speed among the wide receivers at 23.8 miles per hour. I expected him, Coach, to be in the high 4.4s, maybe mid 4.4s. AD Mitchell blew everything out of the water with a 4.34 in the 40-yard dash. Definitely showed the scouts he's got top-end speed. I think he may have solidified himself as a first-round pick with that combine performance.
I sure hope that he has. And, I would not bet against Mitchell is in terms of if you look at he and X's potential NFL career. I wouldn't bet against him having a more productive career just because he does have the more of an NFL type body type to withstand, the hits that you got to take. Although I think, obviously the potential for explosive plays, Xavier, he's off the charts on that. But AD he's just a guy that every NFL team would love to have him. You're not losing a whole lot of speed.
No doubt. Yeah. Did you have any idea that Texas basically had the fastest wide receiving core in college football last year? That's basically what it came down to.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
they did. People say, "Well, how the heck did we lose to OU?" You know.
yeah, a lot of Longhorn fans want to know why didn't we score more points? Well, red zone offense, that was a big issue. And Texas really didn't have the chemistry with the deep ball, right? I believe the deep
Yeah.
ball accuracy was something that Quinn was still working on. So they never really got a ton of chemistry there. I believe he was at 33% completion on the deep ball. Sark wants to throw it deep. That's why he has all that speed on the field. And Texas wasn't great or elite at completing the deep ball. So I think between the deep ball inaccuracy at times or inconsistency and the red zone issues. If Longhorn fans want to know why didn't we score more points with all these great athletes on the field, that's probably why. But hey, you still ended up making the Final Four and you still had one of the best offenses in college football. Okay, so some of the other guys that impressed, we didn't get into the first day guys, but man, Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, they also made themselves a whole lot of money. Byron Murphy had a 4.87 40-yard dash. That was third among D tackles, 33-inch vertical. That was also one of the leaders, second among D tackles. The 1.69 10-yard split, that was fourth among the D tackles. He had a hell of a day. There's some people saying he might end up being the first defensive player taken off the board overall. That's what kind of impressive combine performance that he had overall. Like it looks like guys like Daniel Jeremiah had a number 22 on their board. The latest mock draft that I saw from Lance Zierlein had him going 13th overall to the Raiders. Byron Murphy, probably among all the players, had one of the most impressive showings, Coach. What are your thoughts about Byron Murphy? It looks like he's going to be, for the Longhorns, the top player drafted for them overall, but there's a chance he could end up being the number one defensive player taken off the board.
I did not see that coming at the start of the 23 season. I just didn't know that he had that in him. But the season that he had, and then the combine that he did, 33-inch vertical jump. That's
unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. It really is. And, that's a thing that people don't know how they test vertical jump. It doesn't matter how tall or short you are. They basically measure it, how far you get off the ground. It doesn't matter how tall you are. So 33 inches is impressive. 33, 34 inches. I remember that was elite. That used to be elite. Now we got big defensive linemen doing it. I thought he ran really well. I thought he could have been a little tighter on some of his drills, I thought maybe. But, a lot of those drills, as you well know, the strength staff or the people that are training them for the combine spend so much time running those specific drills. Others don't spend much time. It's almost like, just trying to cram, just study for the test so much. You do it so many times that when you get to the combine, it's second nature because you've done it. Others are spending more time in the weight room trying to get stronger, working on their hip flexibility and hip strength and that kind of stuff, and their starts and everything. But I thought he could have done a little bit better on some of his drill stuff, been a little bit tighter. But overall, I think he's helped himself quite a bit.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Had quick feet, violent hands. There's a really good chance. Like I said, he's not only the first Longhorn off the board, but he could end up being the first defensive player. That's how much he helped himself. Tavondre, there's some concern that he came in maybe a little too heavy. Weighed in at 366 pounds. He did run the 40 at 5.27. Trust me, at 366 pounds, that's really, really impressive. But in terms of the testing, I don't know if that's where he was going to shine. His 40, he was last among D tackles. Broad jump, last among D tackles, 19th among them in the vertical jump. 10-yard split, he was 17th. I think he went for the shock and awe factor, Coach. I think he wanted to go into the combine as the biggest human at the combine, essentially, the most massive human at the combine. And he was certainly in that conversation at 6'4", almost 6'5", 366 pounds. There will be a team that sees him as the perfect missing piece to their defense. I don't know what team it's going to be, but there are a few teams that possibly could see him as that last missing piece, an elite run stuffer, the best run stuffer from the interior defensive line position in college football coming out in this draft, and also a guy that has the potential to be an elite pass rushing force on third downs and on those passing downs. I don't think he'll go in the first round because teams may decide to stay away from him because of the weight concerns. But in the second round, he's going to be a steal for a team because I think T'Vondre Sweat translates to the next level really well in terms of his power.
Yeah, I think he's a scheme guy. I think he's got to fit into their scheme. Not
Yep.
everybody likes a guy like that.
Exactly.
But like as you said several times on our theory broadcast, a team that wants to try to limit the number of people in the box and get more skill guys out there are going to need someone like him that's going to attract double teams and is going to be an immovable force in there. So I think he's I don't know. I look at the mock drafts every year. I used to look at them more closely than I do now, but I don't know that there's a bigger waste of time than somebody spending hours and hours and days trying to figure out a mock draft, and then the first 10 picks, after that, and sometimes they're not even. I mean, not that they get them all right, but I mean it's throw it out the window.
No doubt.
They're not going to tell those guys what they're thinking, what they're looking at. Everybody wants to surprise with what their draft pick's going to be. But, it doesn't take an Einstein to figure out what some teams' obvious needs are. And I think you're right. I think T-Sweat will meet somebody's needs perfectly, and somebody will get a steal.
Yeah, I do. I believe that. I really do. I just think the NFL, with the way the game is going, I mean, last season, half of the highest paid defensive players in the league were interior D linemen. And I think the reason is because more and more priorities being placed on that position because you want those guys who are able to stop the run on early downs, can be 3-down players. And that's a concern about T'Vondre Sweat. Can he be a 3-down player? Can he play first and second down on run downs and then be a guy that can be a pressure defender on third downs? I think he has that kind of ceiling, but certainly NFL teams may question that. That's probably why he's going to drop out of the first round. Doesn't mean he doesn't have, I think, first round potential. The NFL teams only have like 15 or 20 first round grades anyway, even though there are 32 picks in the first round. All right, Coach, I want to ask you also about, so talking about the D tackle, some of these other guys. Let me ask about Keelan Robinson. This is another guy I think made him some money at the combine. He ended up having the fourth best 40 among running backs, second best 10-yard split among running backs. It ran a 4.42 in the 40-yard dash, had a 10.5 broad jump, and he only measured at 5'8" and 191. What I thought was interesting is that I heard them say on the broadcast that he was the best kickoff returner in this draft class. There is a movement in the NFL right now. I don't know if you've watched any XFL football, and if you haven't, I don't blame you. I haven't watched any either, but I've got a chance to catch some of the clips. The NFL is thinking about changing their kickoff return to the XFL kickoff to give the guys to basically give the guys more incentive to return. Right now, the NFL's kickoff return has been shadow banned. 90% of the time, it's a touchback. Hell, all of the kickoff returns in the Super Bowl were touchbacks. The NFL considers it a wasted play at this point. So they want to switch to the XFL kickoff. They got to get the votes. They don't have the votes yet, but the belief is that they will get the votes at one time. They could change it as early as March. When they vote on it this offseason. If they do that, if they do indeed change it, I think some teams may prioritize kick returns again and kickoff returners again, all that hidden yardage, because with the XFL, there's a lot of hidden yardage. For those who don't know, nobody moves on the XFL kickoff except the kicker and the returner until the ball is caught, and then they engage, but they only engage from 10 yards away from each other. There are no high speed car collisions where guys are running from 30, 40 yards away. Coach, if they actually change that kickoff return rule, a guy like Keelan Robinson could end up sneaking on a roster or becoming a priority free agent for a team. And he should pray that happens, because if it does, it's going to give him a lot of options for his professional career potentially.
Yeah, I think so. I've thought of him as a free agent, but he could sneak in late in the draft. I don't know that. He's going to be a spot player on offense. He's going to be a passing down type of back out of the backfield, I think maybe. But I certainly think his kick returning ability is what can win him some money. He can earn some money doing that. But I see him honestly as being a free agent. I just don't know that there's enough tape on him doing great things, to warrant a draft pick. But who am I?
Agreed. No, I agree with you. I think priority free agent is probably his best bet. But to make an actual team, he needs the NFL to change that kickoff rule. If they do, he'll be seen in a different light. A guy that I think also may have made himself some money is Ryan Watts. Ryan Watts, and I didn't expect this really from Ryan Watts because, I mean, the NFL wants to move him to safety. That's what they're projecting him as, but he worked out with the corners. How about this, though, Coach? Even though his 40-yard dash wasn't, impressive, he still ran a 4.53, which I thought was good enough for him considering he measured in at 6'3". I thought the 4.53 was impressive enough because they moving him to safety because they don't think he has the top end speed. He was 25th in his 10-yard split, but he was 6th in his vertical. He had the 6th best vertical among the cornerbacks. He was 2nd in the cone drill. He was 4th in the shuttle among the cornerbacks. His broad jump was 17th, but it was okay. He had the best gauntlet drill, actually, the fastest gauntlet drill, top speed out of all the cornerbacks at 19.8 miles per hour. Strangely enough, his change of direction was considered elite among the cornerbacks. His change of direction, his short area quickness drills, that's the 3-cone, that's your shuttle. And I think he showed enough in the 40 for a team to at least consider making him a developmental project, maybe on their practice squad. 6'3", 208 pounds, ran the 4.53, 6.82 cone drill. What are your thoughts, Coach? I mean, would a team actually take a chance and draft Ryan Watts later on in this draft, potentially with those measurables?
I would have said no until the combine, but after the combine results, I think now he's a pretty safe bet to be a guy that, in the NFL, they love guys that can play more than one position.
They do.
And when you got a guy like him who was impressive, some of the most impressive numbers in the group of corners, then you look at his frame and his height at 6'3", that certainly screams safety to me. But he would be developmental, there's no doubt. But I agree with you. I think you made some money. I think you raised his stock. And I think if you got a guy that, you've seen him on a tape at corner, you project him at safety, I think he can do it. And I think he'll slip in there and get drafted for sure.
Hey, Coach, why do you think Texas didn't try him at safety?
I'm sorry?
Why do you think Texas never tried him at safety?
I don't know. I thought they should have. I thought our woes in the secondary, we needed a shakeup somehow. I don't know. I don't know why they didn't, but I'm sure they had a good reason to. But I would have liked to see it, at least in spring ball. Take a look at and see what they do.
Agreed. I remember Michael Griffin saying it on LHN, saying, "Oh, he's a safety in the NFL. There's no question about it." And turns out Michael Griffin was right. This guy knows about playing safety in the NFL, and that's what they're projecting me as. So I'm glad that Ryan Watts went there and impressed. JT Sanders also worked out. It wasn't necessarily, I don't necessarily an elite workout from a drills perspective. I thought he did, pretty good. He was 5th in the shuttle, 9th in the 40-yard dash among tight ends, had his 6th in the 10-yard split. So, like I said, it wasn't something that would wow you, but I saw Matt Miller say that he at 6'4", 245 pounds, huge hands, by the way, 10 and 1/8 inch hands, 4.69 40, 1.59 split. I heard Matt Miller say that he did look the most fluid of all the tight ends in the drills, in the pass catching drills, in the route running drills, that he looked the best of all the tight ends in those. And to me, for JT Sanders, I don't think he dropped his draft stock. I'm not necessarily sure he raised it. He was the 2nd tight end rated in this draft class. I still think he's the 2nd tight end rated. There's a gap between him and number 3, and there's a gap between him and number 1, pretty much.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think, again, it's going to have to be like Sweat. It's going to have to be somebody that fits.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways that tight ends are used in the NFL, and it's gonna have to be somebody that fits what he brings to the table. And I think the thing that's the most impressive about him is not going to be the stuff that he did in the combine in terms of the measurables. It's going to be putting on that tape, seeing how he catches the ball in traffic, see how tough he is. He's not easy to bring down. he continues to be a progress in work in terms of his blocking. He's going to have to fit into somebody's scheme. He's not just, in my limited opinion, he's not a one size fits all tight end for any team. He'll have to fit in there.
I agree with that.
I think he will fit.
That's a great point, Coach. I agree with you 100%. But I think in the right system, he can be a star potentially. Sure. No doubt. And this guy's only been playing tight end for 3 years now. I mean, he hasn't been playing tight end that long. He doesn't really know the subtle nuances of the position yet. I mean, you get him with an elite tight end coach. By the way, I think Jeff Banks is a hell of a coach. I'm talking about for an extended period of time where you don't have to worry about school, nothing else. You're just focusing on ball. I think he does have all the raw materials to be a star tight end in the league. But I mean, that goes without saying. There's a lot of other things that contribute to that. I will say this. What's helping JT Sanders is you look at the Final Four in the NFL last season in the conference championships. They all had great tight ends. What are you talking about? Kittle from the 49ers, obviously Travis Kelce with the Chiefs. You talking about Mark Andrews with the Baltimore Ravens, even Laporta, the rookie tight end, set records, the Detroit Lions. Everybody who's a smart football man in the NFL knows that it is a great salary cap cheat code to have a really good tight end because you don't have to pay them that much, but they can give you wide receiver productivity. Travis Kelce has led the NFL in receiving yards since 2015. You realize the average top 5 tight end makes $14 million a year. The average top 5 wide receiver makes $27 million a year. It's a bargain to get a really good tight end because you only have to pay them a certain amount. I mean, you ain't got to pay them that much money. I say that much. You still got to pay them, what a tight end is worth, but they can give you wide receiver productivity, which is what they do these days. They split them out. They put them in the slots. I mean, very rarely do you see a tight end who is always an inline tight end these days. They're hunting matchups with those guys. So JT Sanders, I think for a team could be considered great value right there in that second round. Let's talk about Christian Jones, Coach, because I thought Christian Jones in this draft, I've seen him continue to rise up draft boards or at least all people's big boards. And this is a really deep offensive tackle draft. They're projecting him to be a guard at the next level. Is that an easy transition potentially just to go from tackle to guard because your athleticism will be more of an asset inside as opposed to all those freaks you got to deal with on the perimeter and on the edge where unless your athleticism is, the elite level athleticism, that you may be a liability out there in terms of your athleticism matching up with some of the edge rushers, but inside you're going to end up having your athleticism translate to being an asset for you.
It's certainly easier to transition from tackle to guard than it is from guard to tackle. I've always been impressed with Christian's athleticism. We've talked about this before. I was involved in his recruitment, and we talked a lot about the fact that, he thought he was going to be a soccer star. I mean, I think the way that he was raised and his father pushing soccer and I don't know if you ever seen him, kind of volley a soccer ball around, but he's pretty impressive. He's got some skill, but, watching him run in the combine, he looked good when he was running. I thought, I don't know that I think probably a guard is a better place. I don't know that he has that elite athletic ability, that elite strength and flexion in his hips that you have to have, and just that overall dog mentality you've got to be a tackle in the NFL. I mean, you got to know, you got to be able to bring it every single snap. And although he's a great guy, he's more of a cerebral guy. He's not necessarily just a real battle and warrior type of guy. He's very serviceable. He's very, I think, consistent. But again, I think his best years are ahead of him. I think he's not finished developing yet as an offensive lineman or as an athlete.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that's the best thing about him is that the coaches look at him as somebody who's very coachable because he got better every year on the 40 acres, and he hasn't had this body that long. This frame he's been in, like you said, he thought he was going to be a soccer player early in his career when he was 100 pounds lighter and he was 3+ inches shorter. And now in this new frame that he's had, he's been 7 years maybe of his life where he's actually been this big or of this size. I think he may be just figuring out how to move in this body. That's why a lot of coaches have his upside, his potential really high. And I've heard that he will be drafted. And that is not something that I thought I would hear after watching him play, his red shirt freshman year, but he has improved exponentially. And he measured in at 6'5", every bit of it. 6'5". He was a little bit lighter. I think he played at close to 318, but he measured at 305. The 504.40, actually to me at 305 is really impressive, because I don't know, but I think right now today I'd be like a 4.9 or something if I tried to run, tearing hamstring. So those guys are coming, some of the real freaks out there, coach. Okay, real quick, there's some guys who didn't really finish workouts. Jaylen Ford, he tweaked, I think something, some ligament. He tweaked things when he was doing the broad jump and the vertical jump. So don't get a lot of numbers on Jaylen Ford. I expect him to do most of that at Pro Day. There's also Jordan Whittington, who tweaked something. He had a minor injury at the Senior Bowl. So he's going to work out at Pro Day. I heard from my man CJ Vogel that actually Quinn Ewers is going to be the quarterback throwing for his wide receivers at Pro Day. So the NFL scouts will get a little sneak peek at my man Quinn Ewers. So there's still a lot of work to be done for some of these guys at Pro Day, especially Jay Witt. It's going to be a big Pro Day for him. He's did all his medical evaluations, did all the interviews. It's going to be a big Pro Day for him. And also it's going to be a big Pro Day, I think, for Jaylen Ford, because he didn't get to finish his workouts at the NFL Combine. Jaylen Ford, I think Jaylen Ford is going to be a hell of an NFL player. I really, really do. I think he's just the value of the linebacker position has you getting drafted in the middle rounds. But I do think he's a guy that does translate to play at the NFL level. He's so cerebral. He's a great coverage linebacker. I think give him a few years to adapt to the league. And I think he's a guy that will not only be on the NFL roster, I think he can contend for a starting spot in the league. I think he's that good of a player. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. And he's got a knack of being in the right place at the right time. I mean, that doesn't just happen. You don't just come up with the ball in your hands that many times. You have studied a lot of film, and you have a good feel for not only laterally where you need to be, but depth-wise where you need to be. And he's just at the right place at the right time. And whether he can be, a three-down player in the NFL or not, that remains to be seen. But I think he's I'm with you. I think he'll have a great NFL career.
I love what you said there, Coach, because my number one complaint about linebackers, the ones I play with at every level and every year I played, they don't get depth in the passing game. So many of them, they don't have that instinct to know the depth they're supposed to be playing at in the passing game. And that would always be the big complaint watching film. It's like, I need you guys to get depth on this, because they're always trying to play the run. So they get sucked up into the play action all the time. They always get sucked up into the traffic. And then a DB, I'm looking for my inside help. Hey man, where's my curl flat defender? Where you at? Oh man, it was a play action. Hey man, I understand it was a play action, but you can't get fooled and stay down there. Once you figure out that it's a pass, get depth, get back. And he does naturally. He's got that natural. I love you brought that up. The depth is so important. That's how that you're a ball coach. That really did. It came right to me when you said that. All right, Coach. That's enough of the breakdown of the players at the Combine. Before we get out of here, though, I want to ask you about spring ball, because I know you're really excited about it. Less than 2 weeks away. I'll just ask you this, and I'll open it up. What areas do you think the Longhorns will focus on? What areas will get emphasis during the spring for Texas where they want to make the most improvement?
Well, defensively, corners are the position that I'm most interested in. Mm-hmm. Well, just the secondary in general. That's not to say that there's no position that's not going to be critical, of course, especially when you're trying to play at the level that we're wanting to play at week in and week out. But defensively, to me, without a doubt, the corners, not only who plays, but how well they develop and how well they can improve their game in the spring, especially as we saw many times on the deep ball, and just being able to time that right. Offensively, mm-hmm. This sounds a little bit crazy, but I don't think Quinn Ewers feels in his mind that he's officially what he needs to be. Okay. I think you don't listen to all the hoopla and the Heisman talk and all that. He's got to have that dog mentality this spring, and he's got to bring along a new group of receivers, a young group of receivers, and just mesh them all well we can't just assume because he had a great season in 23 that everything's going to fall right in place, because just knowing your receivers and the timing and all that stuff, there's a lot that goes into that. So, everybody's talking about him. What's it going to take for him? He has to continue to develop and continue to be hungry and make the strides that he made from 22 to 23. I would like to see him continue to improve some things in his game. The deep ball obviously is one of them that we've got to get better at. We didn't have a great completion rate, in my opinion. It could have been and should have been better. But offensive line, defensive line are always going to be big ones. But those are the two that I'm most interested in watching: the defensive backs and how well he can come along with his new receivers.
I agree with you, Coach, especially about the passing game and the chemistry with Quinn. To your point about the deep ball, Quinn completed 33% of his passes that traveled 20-plus yards in the air last year. That's probably a little bit below the average. And that was 76th best in the FBS. And after Longhorn fans watched the combine and watched Xavier Worthy set records in the 40-yard dash, and they watched A.D. Mitchell have the third fastest 40-yard dash among wide receivers, they probably questioned whether Texas could have completed more deep balls and could have had more vertical shots downfield. So I'm with you. I'd like to see that get better. The red zone offense, Texas was 120th in touchdown percentage in the red zone last year. If Texas had an average red zone offense last year instead of one of the worst in college football, guys, they win the national title potentially. Or at least they play Michigan for the national title. Yeah. Or at the very least, they play Michigan for the national, even if they had been average. So that's how important it is for Texas to cash in on the red zone. And you're right, Coach. Defense, it's got to be the secondary, and it's got to be coverage. The truth is, Texas has had a lot of positions. Matter of fact, every position on the 40 acres, in my opinion, has gotten better since Sark got here. O-line, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, D-line, linebacker. There's only one position where you really cannot argue there's been marked, improvement, exponential improvement since Sark got here, and that would be the secondary. The secondary, they've been okay, but they haven't taken that leap like a lot of other positions. I expect this year for them to take that leap. So big year for the secondary. They've brought in some reinforcements. Makuba's there. You got Derek Williams down in the secondary, Malik Muhammad. They got athletes that they recruited now in that secondary. Jadae Barron coming back. I expect the secondary to be a strength and coverage to be a strength this year for Texas too. So looking forward to that when the spring ball comes up. Before we get out of here, let's thank our sponsor one more time. We cannot thank Laura Baker and her team enough. Football Theory brought to you by the accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. Give her a shout today at 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Once again, Coach, thank you so much for the time and the knowledge. I'm always smarter after sitting here talking ball with you for a while, Coach. It's always a pleasure. Thanks, Coach, for the time. We appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Can't wait to do it again next week, baby.
That's right. So next week, folks, and thank you guys for your time. Thanks to Laura Baker for her support. And until next time, Coach and I just say, hook 'em.